VSiN, the sports betting network. This is the VSiN Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome into the VSiN Morning Line as we get you ready for NFL Week 8. It kicked off last night with the Rams and Vikings. We will be getting into that game and so much more. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi and Harrison Sanford. We got a jam-packed show for you today, so here's what's coming up on the VSiN Morning Line. Thomas Gable, Sportsbook Director of the Borgata, joining us at 7:45 Eastern with some Bookmaker insights. Jeff Schwartz, VSiN Betting Analyst, joining us at 8:15. Eric Moody, fantasy football analyst for ESPN, joins Harrison with a preview for your fantasy teams at 8:45 Eastern. And Tim Murray joining us in his usual spot, 9 a.m. Eastern, with his college football best bets. Coming up in this hour, we are recapping a really fun Thursday night football game, getting into all of Week 8's top games and divisional games, and we'll wrap the hour with TG, Thomas Gable, joining the show. So let's get into TNF between the Rams and the Vikings. Rams win in an upset. They had been a 2.5-point dog. The over 46.5 also hits. But before we look ahead to the implications as a result of this game, let's talk about how this game ended. Vikings with a chance to lead a comeback in the final minutes of the game, backed up in their own end zone. Sam Darnold sacked for a safety, which ruins their comeback chances. However, the refs miss a blatant face mask call on him. Michael, what was your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, it was just so obvious, and his head turned. I don't know how you could miss it. I don't know how I know they're not allowed to replay calls like that, but I think somebody should have said something, or somebody should have been able to see it, because ultimately it took the ball away. It made it a 10-point game. And look, Minnesota has no one to blame but themselves for losing this. They gained 140 yards on the first two drives of the game. They went down the field and scored 14 points, and from that point forward, they struggled to move the ball. They only gained 136 yards for the rest of the game. So they kind of got their offense stalled. They weren't able to run the ball, get Aaron Jones going. And then, of course, defensively, they struggled to slow down the Rams' run game. The Rams were able to carry the ball 33 times and get the balance within the game. I think Puka Nakua's return was really instrumental. We didn't anticipate him playing because he was said all earlier in the week he wasn't thinking he was going to go, but he went, and he really made a difference to the Rams' offense. You could see it right away.
I thought last night was a damn shame. For it to end like that with that face masking call in the end zone, it's just going to really deter what we're going to think about this game. Obviously, as Michael pointed out, the Minnesota Vikings do have themselves to blame for being in that position, for not being able to put together quality offensive possessions in that second half. But for me, looking at that clear and blatant face mask to end the game there when it was 28-20 and the Vikings have a chance to tie the game, it's just unfortunate. Especially when you think about the fact, Michael, too, I know they can't review it, but aren't all scoring plays under review? Can't you review all scoring plays? It was a safety. It turned into 2 points. It was a scoring play. So to see that happen, just unfortunate. And now you look at the Minnesota Vikings here, back-to-back losses in the past 5 days. And I don't know if this is true, Michael, and maybe you could give me some insight on this. Now teams that have played the Detroit Lions are 0-5 in the following week, in the following game after playing against the Lions. Do you believe there's actually something behind that?
Well, let me start off by your first question, which is, it's a scoring play, but scoring plays are really only reviewed to be determined if he scored or if he didn't score. And so obviously he was in the end zone. There was really no need to review that. The part of the penalty, is just missed. And I don't know how they couldn't see it. We have the referee was standing right back there. He could see somebody's head violently turn backwards. And, unfortunately he missed it. That's just part of the game. They all miss calls. I mean, there was a call early in the game where Minnesota got called for defensive holding on Byron Murphy, and you couldn't even find it on the TV. You couldn't, even Kirk Herbstreit couldn't see it. So, to me, that just goes with the game, and it goes with the lot. I do think there is something to when you play against a physical team. This used to happen back in the day when Big Ben was playing in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was really good even before Big Ben when they had Neil O'Donnell. Then they had Greg Lloyd and they had these great outside rushers. They were so physical that if you played Pittsburgh the next week, you didn't have any gas left in your tank. They beat you up physically, and I think Detroit does that to teams. I don't think this is happenstance. They're 5-0. The teams that lose to Detroit or play them the next week, I think it does take a lot out of you, because I think teams just aren't used to the physicality of the game. Detroit brings a certain level of physicality that, because of the new rules in the league, because of the way teams practice, teams aren't ready for it. And I think it really gives them a unique advantage. And especially, you've got to be careful on a short week particularly. I mean, Minnesota was ready to play. They just weren't ready to keep playing.
Teams now 0-5 with a minus 97 point differential the week after they play the Lions. We'll have to get into what this means for the Vikings, but obviously the biggest surprise of the night was that Puka Nacua was back. His receiving yards prop, by the way, was set at 28.5. He crushed that on just that first drive. Matt Stafford going to him early and often. Nacua ending up with 7 receptions on 9 targets, 106 yards. And then Cooper Kupp had a touchdown on the second drive of the game. He finishes with 5 receptions, 51 yards, and that tutty. Michael, what did they show us about how important these two guys are to this Rams offense?
But the one thing I think that people miss on the Rams receivers is they're so big and physical and they block that, it really helps their run game out. They actually get an extra blocker within the run game. Nakua's a really good blocker. So is Cooper Kupp. And I think he gives them yards after the catch. He gave him a big body guy to go in there and catch. They got him the ball immediately. And I think you could see, I think the key to the game was really how their offensive line played. Matthew Stafford wasn't sacked. He wasn't taking the hits that we're used to seeing him take during the season. I think the Minnesota defensive line really was out of gas after rushing against the Detroit offensive line all last week on a short week. So this wasn't what we're used to out of Minnesota in terms of their ability to really pressure the quarterback and make the quarterback uncomfortable in the pocket. And, you have to credit the Rams for their ability to come in here and play. I think this game saved their season. They're 3-5. I know Sean McVay said all these rumors about Cooper Kupp are really just speculation. They say that all the time. They said that when I reported that they were going to trade Matthew Stafford. They're very good at denying the rumors, but they're not very good at keeping it quiet. So, look, I think it saved their season. I still think Cooper Kupp will be available because I think this is Puka Nacua's team now. He's the main receiver on the team, and Robinson adds 2 touchdown catches in the game. So I think they feel like they could make a move and get away from all that cap money.
Looking at the Rams record now, they are 3-4. San Francisco 49ers are 3-4. You also look here at the team that's leading the division, the Seattle Seahawks, at 4-3. So it looks like the NFC West is definitely up for grabs. So it does lead you to believe that maybe this Rams team will try and stay intact as much as possible and make a push to get to the playoffs. Michael, you did mention Cooper Kupp could very well still be traded. Here was his head coach, Sean McVay, on the situation last night.
Here's what I'll tell you. Teams reached out. Some of the things that I've seen out there, they're just not true. We've addressed that with those individuals. Teams have called about him, and really we let him know what the dialogue was there. And then there's a lot of stuff out there where there's not a lot of accountability to the reports, and that's unfortunate. I think a lot of the things that were out there, speculation was exactly what that was, speculation. We're an inside-out organization. I'm really glad to have Cooper Kupp back with us, and that's what I expect to stay that way.
Well, I think to me, it's interesting. He put it on teams are calling if Kupp's available. Well, I mean, the teams are calling because he is available. I mean, it's kind of interesting. And look, I don't know about the Matthew Stafford. I find that one hard to believe. I don't think they're ready to go ahead and lose their season. But I do think that when you're willing to take on salary and you're willing to trade a player, that's it. But look, what Sean's doing is what all head coaches have to do. They have to protect the locker room, right? And so he's going to make sure that he words it correctly so that he knows that he's not lying to the writers, that, he puts it on teams calling. Well, most of the time teams don't just randomly call. This isn't wildcatting. This isn't trying to dig for oil. This is, guys are available and they're making calls. So it is what it is. I think he's just trying to protect his locker room.
The Rams' upcoming schedule is at the Seahawks, hosting the Dolphins, at the Patriots. So they could put together a nice little win streak here and end up actually competing for the lead in this NFC West. Michael, how do you feel about the Ravens backing off that status of being sellers at the trade deadline? Are they actually going to compete this year now?
The Rams, you mean, or the Ravens?
Yes, the Rams.
Oh, okay. Look, I think the Rams are, I think if they make the right deal, they certainly can. But as I said earlier in the show, this is Puka Nakua's team. I think Cooper Kupp's an accessory. I think they know that he's not the same player he once was. He doesn't have the same burst or accelerator. Injuries have taken a toll on his body. There's no question. And he's making a lot of money. I'm not sure they could get the value back for him. He would help a team. I don't know how much further he's got to help a team as he gets older and into his 30s. So I would say that my sense of it is this is going to be a hard trade for them to pull off unless they really lower their demands. But I think if they're going to take on salary, they want a good pick for him. I'm not sure it's out there. Look, Hopkins went for a fifth. That's not very much. If they're willing to do it, I'm sure somebody will give him a fifth.
As I look back at last night's game and then some of the betting props that I put out there, Michael, you were right. That passing game definitely opened up Kyren Williams to get more rushing attempts. He ended up going over 18 and a half rushing attempts. I picked the under at plus value last night, so that bet didn't cash. But listen, Grace, when I put in the bet yesterday for Matthew Stafford to go over 22 and a half passing completions, I thought that would just be with Cooper Kupp. I would have put more money down if I knew he was going to get Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua at 22 and a half. Man, oh man, that felt like an easy bet. He ended up finish out with 25 pass completions. I'm going to be looking at that prop going forward if he's going to have his two wide receivers in tow for the rest of the season. That's for sure, Grace.
I went 1-1 in my plays, but because that first quarter play was plus 125, we ended up profiting just a little bit. But had I known Puka Nacua was playing, I would have laid off because that completely changes the way you handicap this game. All right, coming up next, we're getting into these NFL Week 8 games. This is the
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Coming up Friday on Follow the Money, big football show, NFL, college, Pat 40 on the great college schedule, Adam Chernoff picks and props, likewise Mike Somich. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it, it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line. We are deep into football season, but the Fall Classic begins tonight. The Yankees and Dodgers beginning the World Series, the 12th time these two teams have met in the World Series in history. First pitch at 8 Eastern with Jack Flaherty and Garrett Cole towing the rubber. The Yankees receiving a little bit of money tonight. They opened as plus 112 on the money line. They are now down to plus 105, plus 108, depending where you're shopping. The Dodgers have been holding steady at minus 125 for this game one. Harrison, I know you kind of had some thinking to do. Are you attending these Halloween parties or do you watch the game? So what did you decide to do on this Friday night?
Friday, the weekend's going to be a little bit more difficult, but tonight's going to be simple. I'm going to go to the Knicks home opener against the Indiana Pacers. Obviously, that's a rivalry matchup, considering what the Pacers did to the Knicks last year in the playoffs, knocking them out. I'm sure every single Knicks fan will be paying attention to their phone at certain points when in terms of the Yankees game. And then as soon as the Knicks game is over, there is a Knicks fan watch party for the Yankees game of right across the street from Madison Square Garden.
Oh, wow.
It is going to be a long night in New York City, that is for sure, but an exciting time. Looking forward to it. Hopefully 2 wins for the Knicks, and more importantly for the Yankees as they begin the World Series, trying to get their first title since 2009. And just yesterday, the New York Liberty had their championship parade down the Canyon of Heroes and finishing up at City Hall. I'm hoping in about a week and a half from now, Grace, there's another championship parade in downtown New York City. That's for sure.
There you go. The winning just keeps following you at this point. Did you end up going to the Liberty Parade?
I hope so. No, I had to nap. This show starts really early, so the nap became the priority, and I wanted to make sure. Yeah, I had to make sure I stayed up late for Thursday night football. And for the NBA games as well. So something had to be sacrificed. It was the parade. But again, if I get a parade a week and a half from now, I'm all good.
You have to attend that one. Well, let me do some capping on tonight's game because I do have a play here. I like the Yankees on the money line. Would have liked them better at plus 110, but we get to this point at the season, there's not many edges left. But to me, it comes down to the starting pitching here. Jack Flaherty, his last start against the Mets was just flat out bad, awful. He said it was the first time in a while I kind of let the game speed up on me and didn't make the adjustment in game that normally gets made. His velo on the fastball dropped 2 miles an hour from his season average. The spin rate was down on that four-seamer and the knuckle curve. The knuckle curve is his best pitch for swings and misses with a 40% whiff rate. He had a 0% whiff rate in that last start. 0. No swings and misses on the best pitch. It was his first game without a strikeout since September 2022. 2 whole years. Wow. Dave Roberts later claimed that he was feeling under the weather. Don't really know if that's true or if it was just an excuse because Flaherty has not really been consistent in this postseason or to end the regular season as well. Garrett Cole on the other side, he hasn't been too great in this postseason. His expected FIP, 539, is second worst, only to Jack Flaherty. And his actual FIP, field independent pitching, is 477, which says he actually got a little lucky and the results should be worse. But if you look at his season-long numbers, he's the much better pitcher than Jack Flaherty. He actually got stronger in the second half in terms of weighted on-base average allowed to opposing hitters and his expected FIP. Those both improved as the season went on, and he's healthier at this point in the season. So with bullpens both being well-rested, both of the offenses are great against righties. It comes down to starting pitching for me, and I will take the Yankees in this one. Let's get back into our NFL Week 8 games now. We're going to go to the top games here. Cowboys-Niners. Michael Lombardi on the Bill Belichick podcast broke this down. They have a bold proclamation here saying that the loser of this game will not make the playoffs. Let's take a listen.
I'm going to tell you, next Monday, one of these teams is going to be looking down the barrel one way or the other. And season's almost half over, and some of these other teams they're chasing are starting to move ahead of them.
You can feel the sense of urgency. Jerry Jones went off on his own local radio station. One of the guys there kind of had a meltdown, if you will. And then, San Francisco's lost all these players. Debo's in a hospital. We lose Brandon Ayuk to a knee. They're not sure if George Kittle's foot's going to be able to operate. And Brock Purdy really played one of his worst games since the Thanksgiving Day game against Baltimore last year.
Yeah, just gave the ball away too many times. Just you can't win that way. Look, it's a new year. They're new teams. All the predictions and all that at the beginning of the year don't mean anything now. It's how these teams are playing, and they're going to have to figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah, and this line has moved. I mean, San Francisco opened up as a 5.5-point favorite. Because of all the injuries, it's now down to 4. There is some cowboy love out there in the marketplace. For me, this is a game where San Francisco's got to try to run the football. Mason inside. The Cowboys have been very, very challenged to stop the run all year, and they're going to have to control the clock and keep the Cowboys off the field offensively. Look, the Cowboys' success has always been playing from in front. And I think San Francisco's success comes from playing from in front. So this is a game that one of these two teams have to start fast. Cowboys have struggled in the red zone all season. They've struggled on third down. The 49er defense is going to have to step up and carry this team. I'm not quite sure they're good enough to carry it as all these injuries on offense affect it. We're not certain about Jennings coming back, their best receiver right now, considering Samuel's out, Ayuk's out. So they need Jennings back. If not, they're going to have a bunch of rookies playing wide receiver. This is a game that, as Bill said, somebody on Monday is going to be really unhappy.
As you guys pointed out, the loser of that game very well could be out of the playoff push for the rest of the season. And maybe the same could be said, Michael, for the Cincinnati Bengals, who have started the season poorly, per usual, but have picked up some steam here over the past couple of weeks. This upcoming weekend, they take on the Philadelphia Eagles. They're laying 3. Do you agree with this line? And do you think the Cincinnati Bengals themselves can afford to have a loss, considering the fact of how well the Ravens are playing and how well the Steelers are playing, particularly now with Russell Wilson at quarterback?
Well, I mean, look, it was one game with Russell Wilson, and he played better. But I think at the end of the day, the Cincinnati Bengals have to do a good job of protecting in this game, right? Eagles have only forced 2 turnovers all season. They've gotten a bunch of sacks lately. Of course, they played the Giants, which helps your sack total go way up. But the reality of it is they're going to have a hard time, the Eagles, covering the wide receivers of the Cincinnati Bengals. And Joe Burrow is going to be able to throw the ball if he's protected. And I think that's ultimately a huge challenge. When the Eagles play against good passing teams, the opening game against Green Bay down in Brazil, the week 3 game against Tampa Bay, they struggled to stop good pass. They feasted on really bad offenses. The last 2 weeks they played the Browns and the Giants, and they've only allowed 29 first downs. I think, to me, this is about can the Bengals protect? I think this is both teams' weaknesses are the strength of the other team. The Eagles can run the ball. The Bengals can't stop the run. The Bengals can throw the ball. The Eagles struggle to stop the pass. So it's kind of a 2 strengths on strengths and 2 strengths on weaknesses. So I think this is going to be down to the fourth quarter. I think the fact that it went to 3 is interesting. It's been 2.5 all week. I'm not sure I would lay the points with Cincinnati because in close games, can their defense really rise to the occasion? I think that's the biggest concern I have.
We saw the Eagles last week get all over Daniel Jones and get a number of sacks. I believe they finished the game with 8. Do you think that was more about the Giants and not having Andrew Thomas? Or was that more about the Eagles maybe picking up Vic Fangio's scheme and starting to get towards a better defense or move trend towards being a better pass rushing team?
Well, I mean, look, the Eagles' fronts is the strength of their team, but the fact that Andrew Thomas wasn't in there, they made a mess of it, and they really started hitting Daniel Jones from the beginning of the game to the end. So I think it's the giant offensive line. Look, without Andrew Thomas, they're not good enough anyway. I mean, he's their best player by far, but the rest of the line isn't good. Now you take your best player out, everybody else is really going to struggle. I think Jermaine Illuminor and every Van Roten. I mean, look, they're playing with the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line. They talked all about how they're going to improve this offensive line. Well, if you take 2 starters from the 2023 Raiders, have you really improved the offensive line? I don't think so.
Another key player on the Eagles, left tackle Jordan Mailata out. Fred Johnson started in his place last week. He gave up 4 pressures on 23 pass blocking plays. Now he has to line up opposite of Trey Hendrickson. who is top 5 in the NFL with pressures. How significant is that left tackle loss?
Well, Hendrickson's by far the best player on the Bengals defense. It's not close. And I think, to me, that's really where the game they've got to be able to pressure Hurts. Look, Hurts hasn't played well all year. And last week he threw for under 100 yards. They were able to run the ball. I think the Bengals struggle to run the football. This is going to be interesting. Eagles still haven't scored in the first quarter all year. What's their game plan? Are they going to come out and run it like we think they should, or are they going to try to throw it? I think that's the challenge. They need to run this ball.
All right, we're going to continue these Week 8 breakdowns. Coming up on the other side, DeAndre Hopkins, by the way, will be wearing new threads when he takes the field. He'll be in the red and gold, suiting up for the Kansas City Chiefs. They got a big spread to cover. We'll be covering that game and all the divisional matchups. This is the VSiN Morning Line.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup. Then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, getting you ready for NFL Week 8. Have you guys ever planned to attempt to try something? I know I plan to attempt to try meal prepping. Doesn't always go that way, but that is the phrasing Adam Schefter is using to describe the Commanders' plan with Jayden Daniels this Friday. They plan to attempt to try to practice him on Friday. Obviously, the young rookie quarterback dealing with a rib injury he suffered in last week's blowout win, and the line movement in this game has followed the belief of whether or not Jayden Daniels will play. The Bears a 3.5-point or 3-point road favorite at the Washington Commanders. Michael, how important is Jayden Daniels to this team?
Well, I mean, he's huge. I mean, just break down his numbers, and you see that obviously he controls everything with what they do. And I think where it's really going to show up is his ability to run when the scramble plays. 266 yards of his 372 rush yards have come off scrambles. That's 71% of the total have come from when he drops back to pass and takes off. It's hard to defend that, right? And so now with Mariota, who can still move around, if he has to play, you're not as worried about that. And so I think that takes a whole element. But bigger than the rushing numbers are the fact that his throws down the field, that third-level throws are just incredible. Caleb Williams, 140 of his completions have come from 10 yards and in. Caleb Williams is playing much better, but he doesn't throw the ball on the third level like Jayden Daniels does. He doesn't have any accuracy on the third level. I think he's completed 4 passes over 20 yards his rookie season. This kid's unique in that area, and that's big strike ability makes it so different to deal with. To me, the verbiage that Adam used tells me he's not going to play. If you're going to attempt to try to practice, that's not a good sign. Now, here's the issue. They don't like for practice, you want a player to go out there without any medication. I'm sure they could probably do something to numb the pain of the rib, but I still think during the course of the game it becomes a problem. You can't do that for practice. So I think, to me, they want to see what his pain tolerance is as he goes through this practice and see if they could actually inject him Sunday morning to play the game. But I think it's rather iffy, if you will.
That is going to be a major game with or without the 2 rookie quarterbacks being in the lineup. Obviously, the Bears have been playing well going into the bye week, and right now the Commanders stand at the top of their division. Looking at 2 other teams standing at the top of their division, Seattle Seahawks hosting the Buffalo Bills, leaders of the NFC West and the AFC East. Going into this game, Michael, as the Seahawks are laying, the Seahawks are actually getting 3 points at home. DK Metcalf is questionable for the game. How do you think this one plays out between these divisional leaders?
This one hasn't moved. This number's been 3 all week long, which is somewhat surprising to me. Buffalo is getting healthier. I think a lot of their defensive players will be back this week, which is critical for them. They've been kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul on the defensive side. I think this will, without Von Miller, who's still being suspended, I think this will have Taron Johnson at full strength. They'll have Benford at full strength. They'll have Bernard at full strength. Ed Oliver should be at full strength. So to me, I'm surprised this line hasn't moved to Buffalo. Look, we know Seattle struggles to really protect the run. Now, they're healthy too, so that could really entice them. They've made trades to try to reinforce their run defense. They've traded Jerome Baker to the Tennessee Titans to get back another linebacker so that they could have more balance within the framework of their defensive structure. But I don't know if that's going to really help them when you look at it. I don't know if Ernest Jones is going to be able to walk off from Tennessee. He was at the Rams too, and then come right in and play will linebacker for them and make a difference. So I really like Buffalo here. This is going to be one of my plays today on Chris Russo. I think Buffalo's the better team. I think they're only laying 3. You don't have to give up that half point, which will be a difference. And without DK Metcalf, now all of a sudden Kenneth Walker has to really run the ball effectively, and it puts more pressure on Geno and this offensive line, which is going to start a rookie at right tackle, Michael Jarrell. because they had to put Stone Forsythe on IR. I think it opens up a huge concern. This line is really into problems, and all their backups, including Jarrell, are late-round picks or college free agents.
As we get into week 8 of the NFL season, it really is the best time to be a sports fan. The sports equinox is upon us with all 4 major sports in action. And there's no better time of year to be a sports bettor. With our new Sports Equinox special, you can get all the bets for all the sports over at VSiN.com with your VSiN Pro subscription. Sign up now and get full VSiN Pro access to everything we do through May 1st for only $120. It's a limited time deal, so sign up now. Daily best bets. You can get the betting splits from DraftKings, all types of breakdowns and articles. That's over at VSiN.com. Okay, we have 5 divisional matchups this week. The Chiefs, a big favorite against the Raiders. 10 points is this spread, and they'll get a little boost on offense with DeAndre Hopkins coming over in a trade from the Titans. Hopkins, a decorated wide receiver. The only thing he hasn't done is make a deep run into the playoffs. This week, he talked about how that could change playing with Kansas City.
But it takes your game to a different level. It takes your focus, your drive, knowing that you're playing for something. It takes your game to a different level. I haven't played meaningful football in a couple years since, we probably started 8-0 in Arizona. So, it takes your game to a different level.
Well, I think there's no question he hasn't played a lot of meaningful games. But he chose to sign in Tennessee last year. I think he felt like they would be better, but they're certainly going to help them. I think this is more of a pickup that will enhance their ability to control the football. Hopkins isn't going to make explosive plays. He's always typically covered, but he has great eye-hand coordination, and he has the ability to catch the ball in a crowd, which he does really well. And he'll keep the chains moving because of those hands. So I think, to me, this team is still going to be a run game. And when they get Pacheco back, which they need, is going to be featured by him and their defense. That's how they're playing it. And I think this piece reinforces that idea because it gives them a controlled receiver. They're not going to score 30 points against anybody. They're going to win games 20-17, 20-10. I think that's how they want to play the game. That's how they're going to do it. They're going to rely on their defense. They're going to rely on their defense creating turnovers. Gardner Minshew turned the ball over 4 times last week. We'll see how he holds up. This offensive line for the Raiders has not improved. They're playing young players in that line. It hasn't really worked out. Starting right tackle's a draft pick. The starting left guard's a draft pick. They have had problems in their offensive line, and that's just not a good team to go against in the Kansas City Chiefs. It looks so easy to take the Raiders and with the 10 points or the 9.5, whatever number you get. But what bothers me about this game is how the Raiders have acted so cocky about playing the Chiefs and how they think they have Mahomes' number. And they talked about it all off season. Typically, you might think that Kansas City look ahead in this game and might have their eyes on a different target. But I have a feeling that all those words, all that bulletin board material is going to come back and haunt the Raiders.
I had the same feeling, Michael. I wanted to almost take Patrick Mahomes over 1.5 passing touchdowns. That's a line that's available at plus value right now. He hasn't done it in the past 2 or 3 weeks, but all that chirping from the Las Vegas Raiders leads me to believe that the Chiefs want some type of clapback in this matchup, in a matchup between divisional rivals. But I want to focus in here on the Vegas Raiders here for just a moment. I'm struggling to figure out, Michael, how they're able to score in this matchup. Obviously, there's no Devontae Adams. There doesn't seem to be any confidence in whatever quarterback they put out there. There is Brock Bowers, and we know the Kansas City Chiefs have been, if there's one thing they've been susceptible to, Michael, is the tight end production. But I have to feel if Kansas City knows there's no other threat in this offense other than Brock Bowers, they can take him out of this game as well.
Yeah, no question. And look, the Raiders won last Christmas Day. They didn't complete a pass after the first quarter. They turned the ball over for 2 touchdowns. That's how they won. They won with their defense. And they're going to have to win this game with their defense. They're going to have to win this game because Max Crosby's rushing against Jawan Taylor, and he's going to create a pressure and a turnover. Mahomes has turned the ball over. I think that's really the key for the Chiefs. Can they protect the football? Because the Raiders, as you've indicated, don't have an explosive offense to score a lot of points. And they can't run the football. They have a hard time blocking Kansas City's front. I think to me this is about, can the Chiefs protect the ball, make the plays that they need to make, and their left tackle, can he block Malcolm Koonce? Can he block all the Raiders defensive linemen, Tyree Wilson, and well enough to be able to keep pressure off of Mahomes?
We have a minute left, so I think we can squeeze another game in here. Falcons-Bucks. This one could have been much more competitive a week ago, but Chris Godwin out for the season. Mike Evans out till week 11, and this line is showing just how significant those two wide receivers are. Flipping from Bucks -2.5 to Falcons -2.5. Michael, your thoughts on this game?
Well, I mean, look, I think it's going to be a really competitive game. Atlanta was fortunate to win the last game. They won in overtime. They scored a touchdown, but the Bucs had opportunities. They turned the ball over. Look, the Bucs can run the football, and even though they may not have Evans and Godwin, they're going to be able to run the ball on a weak Atlanta defense, and I think the Bucs will play better defense this time around.
All right, we've previewed the games. Now it's time to get some bookmaker insights. Coming up next, Thomas Gable of the Borgata joining us with a betting report on this weekend's football games and the World Series. This is the VSiN Morning Line.
In the heart of downtown Las Vegas, a sports oasis awaits. Stadium Swim, the ultimate outdoor amphitheater. Built for the ultimate sports fan, with a colossal screen that brings the game closer than ever. Reserve a daybed, private cabana, or lounge in the center of it all. 6 pools to dive into as the game heats up. And the best part, there's never an off-season. Open 365 days a year. Stadium Swim, it's always spectator season.
Join the guru, John Hansen, at the intersection of prop betting and fantasy sports on Prop Points, only on VSiN.
Why? I think it's because a lot of these read option quarterbacks stink. I think you want Flacco starting for the Colts.
John and his guests will help you find the connection between the two and give you his expert advice on how to capitalize when a number is too good to pass up. Prop Points, every weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern on VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Are you the type of player who's looking to get down $10,000 or more on an NFL line at the best price in the market? Or perhaps you're looking to get your in-game play instantly accepted? Introducing Sport Trade, the app that's going to change sports betting. -104 lines instead of the typical -110, instant in-game betting, and a concierge player service. Sport Trade is perfect for those who want a premium betting experience. Sport Trade is live in New Jersey, Colorado, Iowa, and now Arizona. And it's coming to Virginia soon. Download Sport Trade and use the code VSiN to earn 10% cash back on each wager in your first week. Terms apply. You must be 21 years or older to play. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line, where we have been previewing these NFL Week 8 games. Now it's time to get some bookmaker insights with Thomas Gable, the Borgata Sportsbook Director, joining us on the Progressive Guest Line. TG, thanks so much for joining us on this fine Friday morning. Before we look ahead to the Sunday games, want to get your thoughts on last night's Thursday night game. How did the Borgata make out from the Vikings-Rams?
Good morning, Grace. Yeah, good result for the house last night. We saw Rams money there early when we first opened this game, and even through yesterday, they were taking 3. Obviously, game closed 2.5. And but when you take into account all the parlays, that a lot of recreational players were just thought that this was going to be an easy money for them with laying just 2.5 or laying 3 with the Vikings. And I think we again saw where there seems to be this little Detroit Lions hangover after you play Detroit. I think only the Cowboys have lucked out and gotten a bye week. Everybody else has lost outright and not covered after playing Detroit the previous week. And it was a bad situational spot for the Vikings. Tough divisional game, coming off their first loss there to Detroit, and then to have the short week to travel to LA to play the Rams. It was a tough scheduling spot for Minnesota. But listen, give the Rams credit. They're getting healthy again, and it was good to see Nakua back and Cooper Kupp. And suddenly they find themselves back in the NFC West race. Last night before the game, Rams were plus 950 for the NFC West to win the division. Now this morning they're plus 550. So you've seen movement there. They're right back in the thick of things. The 49ers obviously are still the favorite in that division, and once they get healthy, that's why they're priced the way that they are. But that division is really up for grabs, I think. And then in the NFC North now with the Vikings, another loss for them. They went from plus 175 to plus 275 and moved the Lions from plus 120 to even money now to win the NFC North. And but the Vikings are far from out of it by any means. But Detroit just looks so good at this point, and certainly even money now. But Packers also still in the thick of things there in the NFC North, 3-1.
TG, big game, the Eagles versus the Bengals. The line, in most shops is 2.5, and it really hasn't moved all week. What's the action that you've been taking at the Borgata on this game?
Yeah, so it's an interesting spot again for the Eagles. I think they played the Giants at a good time for them. Michael, you saw all the rhetoric around Nick Sirianni, and I think it has quieted some of the voices that were getting rather loud after the previous week there, and when they played the Browns. A nice, decisive victory at the Meadowlands against the Giants quieted them down, but now this is certainly now a big step up in class, at least in terms of offense, to the Giants with having to stop the Bengals offense and Joe Burrow. I think this is going to come down to whether or not the Eagles secondary can step up and make some plays here and not let Joe Burrow just feast and move the ball downfield. I think it's going to be a tough game for the Eagles defense. I really do. They're going to have to get pressure, which is something that they were able to do last week against a beleaguered Giants offensive line. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher for them in this spot. and they're going to have to control the clock here by running the ball. We know that teams have had success running the ball against Cincinnati so far this year. And obviously Saquon Barkley coming off just a monster game last week. The Eagles are going to have to kind of get back to that identity of being able to run the ball down the throats of other teams. And they should be able to do it here against Cincinnati and control the clock. But this could end up being a higher scoring game here, especially if Joe Burrow just continues to pick up like chunk plays and chunk yards here against this Eagles secondary, which I have a hard time seeing that this Eagles secondary is going to be able to stop Burrow.
TG, I want to go back to last night. The Minnesota Vikings lost that game to the LA Rams, and it was a popular fact going into the game, and it's got reiterated here again this morning. Teams that have played against the Detroit Lions are 0-5 in their following game. Have you seen anything like this before in the books, and how do you expect the betting public to maybe react to that going forward?
Well, you started to see that pick up steam this week, Harrison, I think, really with bettors, and I'm sure now that it's happened again with the Vikings losing last night, it's going to be even more popular of an angle. And, you know, we'll see how it goes. I think there might be something to it just in the fact that Detroit is a very, very physical team. And it probably does take a little bit more out of a team to play them. But again, I think it was a bad scheduling spot for Minnesota last night in the short week after having to play a physical divisional game there against Detroit. So we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. I mean, listen, the Lions have the Titans this week. The Lions are 11.5-point favorites. I don't think anybody's going to be looking and say, oh, man, the Titans are already fade material. So they're just going to get faded even more maybe, next week. But we'll see how this plays out as the season goes longer. But I think right now it's just one of those things where Detroit is a physical team. They're going to beat you up, and, teams get up to play them. And, it's the same thing with college football now, too. As the lines get tighter, you're going to have to look for situational spots. And that's really what it comes down to now as the weeks go on and you don't see really the line movement that you do in the beginning of the seasons. You're going to have to start looking at these situational spots for your handicapping.
TG, I'd like to get your thoughts on the World Series. There's really only been a few cents of movement on either side here. What type of action are you seeing, not just in the series market, but in the Game 1 market tonight?
Well, for us, I think this is it's going to be a great series. I think for sportsbooks across the country, let me put it that way, you have the two biggest market teams in the country playing each other. So for us, it gets a little bit more of an added boost. We're probably going to be shaded with Yankees money. That's just typical from where we sit geographically. We get New York money. In terms of Game 1, a little bit more money right now on the Yankees. Get plus 105 on them. Cole starting. Real Flaherty hasn't been sharp, with the exception of that one outing. So I expect we're going to need the Dodgers tonight. Series price, Dodgers $1.30 for the series. We're in good shape in the future book on both of these teams. We're a bigger winner to the Dodgers than we are to the Yankees, but still a winner to the Yankees as well in the future book. So it's really going to go game by game for us. And I think probably most games we're going to end up needing the Dodgers, again, just due to regional bias here. But the Yankees with Cole going in Game 1, I think right now it's a small decision, but obviously a lot of the handle is going to be coming in yet tonight and this afternoon. So I think we're going to end up needing the Dodgers for Game 1, and probably that's going to be the way the rest of the series plays out. We're going to probably need the Dodgers game to game.
TG, we have less than a minute to go. Biggest game on the book on your slate on Sunday in the NFL. Which one is the one that people are betting and you're going to need the other side?
Well, the most heavily bet game right now, Michael, is the Eagles-Bengals. No surprise there. But in terms of lopsided games right now, it's the Chiefs and Raiders. Chiefs have taken the majority of the money. We're probably going to end up needing the Raiders to cover 9.5 or 10. And that's going to be where there's going to be a couple big decisions, I think, for us. And we're going to need some dogs to come through.
All right, Thomas Gable, Sportsbook Director of the Borgata, joining us every Friday morning. Thanks so much for your insights, TG, and enjoy the weekend.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, coming up next, we are resetting at the top of the hour with our takeaways from Thursday night football, plus getting into the World Series a little bit more.
It's that magical time of year, the sports equinox, when all 4 major sports are in action. VSiN is celebrating